We are connecting today. We're on a call together, an Instagram Live, to chat about two powerful mindset shifts or tweaks that we can make to overcome challenges with food. So, Jess and I are both coaches, and we wanted to meet today and chat about topics that really we love to talk about because we have a special interest in helping women become more natural, normal eaters, have a healthy relationship with food and their bodies.
Do you want to share a little bit about how you got to become a coach and why you became interested in this field?
Yeah. And
sorry to interrupt you straight away, but because we were talking actually just before about how when we first met, you weren't doing this either.
Yeah.
You were doing more coaching and things. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Like Jess and I met at a business, online business course. We did a course together, and then there was a meetup, and we sat next to each other, and we really hit it off immediately. And I was just saying to Jess before our call, like, it's so amazing because at that point I knew I wanted, there was something in me to start, and I wanted to help women, and I thought it was in the line of coaching, but I later realized that the psychology of eating, or the way that we think about ourselves and our relationship with food is really at the core. I've always been into food and nutrition, and I thought that that's what I needed to do to be the best version of myself. But, pulling back some layers and working through that, unpacking that a bit more, I've later realized that that the work is really internal, and it comes from a place of self-compassion and self-care. I'm really jumping to the crux of it, or the root of what this is. But it's been a journey because I've sort of been very health conscious and restrictive around my food, and very perfectionistic, and had lots of rules and ideas around what healthy really looked like and meant. And then later realized that it's actually a lot to do with the way that what you tell yourself and how you treat yourself as well. But Jess, you've got a really interesting story that I love to hear, and I think it's super relevant to what people go through. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I was a dancer and had danced since I was like 4 years old. So I was very much in a space of spent a lot of time, in my dancing studio, where there was a big focus on body and how your body looked, and the fact that it needed to look a certain way. So from a young age, I learned that my body was wrong and I needed to change that, and it was up to me to change it. So did every diet known to mankind, and as I got older, I learnt more about food. So my diets became a bit more sneaky and a bit more sophisticated, so to speak. So wasn't really, when I was younger, I would do slim fast and all those really like fad diets. But then as I got older, I was like, well, I'm just doing this detox. But it was definitely just an excuse to diet. So constant dieting, had a terrible relationship with food. And so I was also an emotional eater. I would binge eat. I just didn't know how to be normal around food. And I was a professional dancer, so I was dancing once I left school and into my mid-20s. And I remember thinking about what I'd want to do after that too. And I thought I wanted to move into, becoming a nutritionist or a naturopath and that kind of thing. So I definitely wanted to get into the wellness world. And then, as my own food challenges dawned on me, I was like, oh, I think this is what I actually want to do. I think this is what I want to help people with, because you can tell someone what to eat, but sometimes they just can't do it because there's those challenges with food that get in the way. So I feel like for a lot of people, this is the first step, healing their relationship with food so that they can make those, you know, more beneficial choices for themselves around food. So yeah.
And when we talk about what those challenges are, let's sort of give a bit of a color to what that means and what we're talking about here. So, you know, some of the challenges with food might mean that we have a preoccupation with what we're eating. That might look like, you know, hyper aware of what ingredients or calories or macros are in that food. There's binge eating, emotional,
like mind ticking over food.
Yeah, like and also I think there's a bit of being like looking at what's the next thing, or this didn't work, but there's always something else, and there's that didn't work for me, but there is another option or idea. Food can be a stressor and a source of anxiety for a lot of women, and it's fueled often by diet culture and beliefs that we need to look and be a certain way, and that often thinness equals happiness. That's the underlying message of this all. So I think that's probably what you covered.
Yeah.
So I think one of the concepts that we love to discuss with our clients, and that we both have this commonality and found that it's helped us hugely in our growth and development and change and in bettering our relationship with food and our bodies, is this idea that that food challenges or binge eating or emotional eating is actually a symptom, not the problem itself. We often look at if we do have that tendency, that is actually something that needs to be fixed and, you know, cut down, and we just need to have stronger willpower, or be more disciplined, or be really determined to just, you know, fix that completely. And I think we're missing a really key opportunity to see that as something else going on, and an indicator of something else. So that's why we really love to help our clients understand that that's actually a symptom, not the problem itself. What do you think, Jess?
Yeah, spot on. So true. And I think when you don't realize that, and of course you don't realize that because binge eating or emotional eating or just any sort of challenge with food does feel like the problem. But when you learn that it's a symptom, and when you can really start looking at it that way, that's when you can heal the situation, because instead of using all your energy to attack the food challenge, you look a bit deeper and you look at why it's happening. And then that's where the magic happens, because as you said, it's a symptom. You know, food challenges are rarely even about food. And most of the time when we're coaching, yes, food is the starting challenge, but that is the doorway. It's like a doorway into personal growth and all the other stuff that's happening for people's lives.
Yeah, that's right. And that's so true. I know that a lot of clients often just like really surprised that the amount of energy or talk that we actually have around food is very minimal, because the bottom of it, or the real crux of it, it's actually about so much more than that.
It's pointing to something else.
Yeah, and what actually shows up often is that there's maybe something missing in their life. Sometimes comes down to like a lack of purpose, or you're not living out what really feels aligned to your particular like skills or your abilities, and you know you're not in the right job, or really like you know, not expressing your creativity, or there's something actually like missing, and that they're actually, you know, the food or like is a source of pleasure as it is naturally, but it feeds that instead. And so what we do is helping pull back those layers and guiding through that process. And it's never about the food.
The 100%. And then I think when you do see food a food challenge as the actual problem, that's when you try to attack it with, like, I don't want to say silly things, because nothing's silly, but you know, those really like specific things where you might not take your debit card to work to stop you from buying something at lunchtime, or you might tell everyone that you're not eating sugar anymore to keep you accountable. Like, it's dealing with the problem at like such a micro level. And again, it's not a waste of time, but it kind of is, because it'll just keep you more stressed about the food situation, and you're not going to be doing much healing on the broader level, on the broader things. So yeah. And I think the other thing that people, the mindset trap that people can fall into is blaming their willpower and thinking they don't have enough of it, and that's the reason why they're challenged with this food thing, whatever it is for them. But willpower is such a limited resource. It's not the solution, it's not the answer. People who are normal eaters don't have more willpower than you. Like, that's not the answer, and that's not your issue, not having enough of it.
And when you really break down the idea of willpower, it's actually something that you're fighting yourself against, which is just, it does not make sense to let your willpower play out in a situation, because you're just like trying to fight against something that you underlyingly want to do, and you're like telling yourself no, which is all about what this work is about, is actually like limiting that emotional attachment to food and like emotional restriction that is this like underlying idea of, you know, of diets and the way that we eat and the way that we are trying to be good. When you're trying to be good, you're actually, you know, depriving yourself. And so it's I think overall we're looking at this as a symptom, not the problem itself.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good segue into the second mindset tweak that I wanted to talk about, because that is that you can't fail with food. So it's kind of like when you were saying, like, trying to be good and not being bad and that kind of thing. I know that neither of us like to use that language around food, and actually yesterday I was in Harris Farm, and I was in the chocolate section, and there was a dad with his two boys, and he was like, "Oh, this is the bad section, let's go." And I was like, it's not though. Obviously I didn't say anything because that would be strange, but I just, like, that language is so normal around food. Like, that's just a natural thing to say when you're in the confectionery aisle, you know? So that's very ingrained in us to think of food as good and bad. And so to think that you can fail around food is going to cause you so much stress. I think what sets people up to believe they can fail around food is diet culture, sneaky diets in disguise, like I quit sugar, or detoxing, or clean eating, where it's not necessarily a diet, but it is in the way that you can get it wrong, like wrong. So failure and food don't make any sense. It's one of the first things I talk to my clients about, because they've kind of come to me feeling like a failure, which is just not right. And it's really silly to waste your energy thinking that. The way I see it is that the situation is always neutral with food. It's the meaning that we attach to it. So just say you have someone who's a natural, normal eater. They've never had experienced any challenges with food or anything like that. They might overeat, because normal eaters aren't perfect eaters. They're just relaxed about it. So they might overeat, but then they generally move on with their life. They don't think about that as a failure. They don't go down this rabbit hole of thinking they've messed up or they've been bad. So it's the meaning that we attach to those behaviors and moments around food that can cause us more stress.
Yes, absolutely. And that we have, you know, when you think about a normal eater, someone who just doesn't kind of really know what you mean by you can't have that, or you can't, they're just quite, they don't have these hang-ups, or they don't fear that they can't be trusted around food. They just don't let it overwhelm them or overcome them in their decisions, and they're actually, very in touch, whether they know it or not, with their own signals, their fullness signals. They can stop when they're full, and being able to not eat the chocolate because they know that it'll be there later on, and know that they can pick it up when they're hungry, or they feel like they want something sweet, and not be overcome by the situation and get caught stuck in their head about it.
Yeah, and there's no wagon to try and stay on. I think that's the thing as well. It's like a good way to describe when you're not on a diet, but you kind of are, because you've got that diet mentality, is that you're trying to stay on the wagon. And the problem with that is not that you've fallen off the wagon at times, it's that the wagon even exists at all. Because, I don't know, I guess it's hard to describe when you've been in that mindset for so long, but I definitely in the past used to see eating as like, I'm on the wagon, oh, I've fallen off, oh, I'll get back on. But now it's like, oh, it's just life. Like there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. We're constantly ebbing and flowing in life in general anyway, and that's what we do with food. So so it's actually, you can't fail with food, and the more that you believe you can, and the more that you keep telling yourself that you are, or you having those moments where you fail, the more power that food has over you.
The more you put yourself in and try and hold on to it with your fingernails, then the more you're good or bad. And that's what the whole thing that we're talking about is, to sort of detach yourself from this moral judgment and emotional attachment to food. And I know sounds like a big task to take on, but it's actually knowing that there is a life outside of this dieting world. Hugely, people don't know any other way, because kind of understanding things, and that's what we love to offer, is this entirely new paradigm or perspective shift on what is possible, and what doing full circle from once being natural in tune normal eaters to taking this full circle and having to learn and unlearn a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah, perfect. I love how you summed that up. And I think the more you can have awareness, awareness is always the first step, and awareness really heals. So the more you can have awareness around when you're looking at food as a problem, not looking at food as a problem, looking at a challenge with food as a problem, or any unwanted behavior around food as a problem, remind yourself that it's a symptom and that it's an opportunity to look deeper. And then anytime you feel like you're failing around food, again, you can challenge that for yourself, and to have that awareness of that messaging that you've been taught, and come back to the truth, which is you can't fail around food. It's you who is attaching meaning to what's happened. So we really feel like those two tweaks to your mindset set you on the best path possible to really heal your relationship with food, and just remove a lot of the stress and chaos that comes with challenges with food, because we both know that it's stressful. But if you can tap into these two mindset tweaks, then you're going to be on such a good path. So if you do want to read into this kind of thing more, if you are challenged at the moment with something to do with food, Belina has this awesome resource. It's an intuitive eating kit. And that's going to help you. Well, you can actually share what that is about.
These points I cover off in a couple of summarized tips in the guide in the kit, but it also includes a quiz, to help you break down and identify the areas of your relationship with food that need some work, perhaps, or where we might sort of see that you can uncover what is actually sort of a symptom of something else going on, as we've covered. So it's a really source to further in from this conversation, I think. And Jess, you have specifically some tips around binge eating as well, because this is where you love to chat about that area as well. What binge eating actually is, what it is a symptom of, and uncovering that for clients, right?
Yes, you're so true. So I love talking about binge eating, which is so funny because it was like the most shameful thing in my life when I was going through it. Now I'm like, I will talk about binge eating. So, so I've got a free, it's a mini guide. There's 3 powerful tips and strategies just to help you overcome binge eating. And again, it's about those perspective shifts and seeing the bigger picture. So there's no tips like take a bath, go for a walk, which are lovely, but not always beneficial. So you can check both of those resources out on our websites. All right, see you later.
Bye.